Hello and good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. We are Monday, December 8th today, and this is the 21st meeting of the Environment and Climate Change Committee. On behalf of Ottawa City Council, I wish to acknowledge that Ottawa is built on unceded, unsurrendered Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. The City of Ottawa honors the people and land of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation and honors all First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. I'll ask the committee coordinator to do a roll call of all members, citing that Councillor Johnson and Councillor Curry have both let me know that they're going to be a bit late in joining us today.
Councillor Lulaf.
Good morning.
Councillor Hill.
Present.
Councillor Curry. Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Kavanagh.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you. Present.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Devine.
Here.
Councillor Tierney. Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor Brown.
Here.
Councillor Lowe.
Here.
Vice Chair Carr.
Present.
Chair Menard.
Here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, seeing none. We'll confirm the meeting minutes from the 21st of October. Are the meeting minutes from that meeting carried and confirmed? Thank you very much. We have the 2026 draft operating and capital budget, which will be the main item for today. So we'll hold that. We have 5 delegations registered for that item. And beyond that, we've got the financial statements for in-house solid waste collection, the external audit results showing, again, positive results for the in-house collection financially. Can we carry those report recommendations? Thank you very much. And the Office of the City Clerk, status update, Environment and Climate Change Committee inquiries and motions for the period ending 27th November 2025. Can we receive that report for information? And the last one was also received for information, excuse me, not carried. Okay, so we will jump right in to the 2026 draft operating and capital budget. I'll ask staff, they're already up here, ready to go. So we'll turn it over to Cyril and his team for a presentation, and then we'll have the roadmap motions introduced, and then we'll get right to delegations after that. Cyril, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members of the committee. So I'm joined by my colleagues to the right that will go through the presentation for this committee. You can go to the next slide. So we made it to the last committee at this point, so we just got to get through this next couple of hours and see what we have for Wednesday. But this presentation, again, is a standard practice or standard presentation that we prepared this year to make sure it's consistent. We're going to go through the tax-supported component of the budget and the rate component of the budget. This is every committee I've been trying to identify some sort of uniqueness. With this committee, this is the longest presentation from a budget perspective that you'll see throughout the 9 committees that I've been at so far. So proceeding to the next slide. This budget, so this is going to be, we're going to break it into 2 components because there's a tax component funded through taxes and there's a rate component, the water, drinking water, and wastewater. So from a tax perspective, the overall gross budget is just over $255 million. That actually represents a 2% reduction, but that reduction is driven from the changes in solid waste, specifically as we're removing from the recycling component of that business. So on the gross expenditure side, you see a reduction in the gross expenditures, but you also see the offsetting reduction in revenue. So net, there's 0 impact to the budget. So if you remove that element from the overall budget, if you compare the year-over-year increase, the actual increase for this budget is more like 6.2%. So as a reminder, when we go through the various committees, that's pretty consistent. We've had as high as 10.8 on transit, CSSD at 6.4, EPS at 7.4, a couple in that 3+% perspective, and this budget 6.2 once you adjust for that one-time transition for solid waste. On the revenue side, predominantly the $114 million, that's mainly revenue for solid waste. In 2024, as a reminder, we did transition the solid waste program to a full rate recovery program. Prior to 2024, a portion of that was on the tax bill, a portion was rate. With the new master plan, long range financial plan, that was transitioned in 2024, and that's your bulk of the revenues that you'll see in this budget. On recoveries and allocations, again, this is charges where all the charges come into the expense lines. And then if we recover costs from the capital program, you'll see a credit on that line. Also within forestry, you'll see a bigger number here because if you look at the forestry, you'll see the recoveries and allocations line as a credit. But then if you look at the internal line just above that, it's almost an equal offsetting number. What that represents within public works, mainly forestry and some of the other service areas, they work on a work order system. So all the cost kind of comes into core elements. Then they break that cost back down to actual activities. So whether it's tree maintenance, tree watering, et cetera. So you kind of see a credit and a debit in the recoveries and the internal cost line. No FTE growth in this budget, none required. And then you have an overall capital program of $52 million. And new this year, which was a recommendation that we heard from this committee last year and some of the public delegates. 2 years ago, we started to introduce the climate change lens to our budget documents. In prior years, that will be seen throughout each of the individual templates of capital spread across all the different committee books. New this year, if you refer to the transmittal report, document 1, we provide a summary consolidation by committee of details of whether that's a minor, moderate, or major contribution to climate change. So it's much more easy to reference in terms of those impacts. Next slide, please. Again, this is basically the various service areas that are composed of the tax side of this budget. Just for reference, the general manager's office and the BTSS, that's an increase of 3%. Infrastructure services, 6%. Asset management, 8%. Climate change, 5%. Solid waste, -5%, again, because of what I spoke to previously. And then forestry, a 7% increase. So just showing a little bit of the increases across the different service areas. Next slide. There's two main components of the capital budget. The biggest component being solid waste, and that's where we leverage debt for the solid waste program. And then on the cash side or the reserve side, that's cash from the solid waste reserve and cash from the citywide capital reserve. The citywide capital reserve, that's the source that we use to fund the climate change resiliency capital initiatives. Next slide. Again, two major components, solid waste being the biggest one. And then on the climate change and resiliency, we do have a $9 million climate change budget for this year. That's an increase over last year at $6 million. So that's a $3 million increase. And then we have the BEAM capital project, which is just shy of $3 million. And then the solid waste is the various initiatives that align to the solid waste master plan and the solid waste master plan. With that, one more slide. Next slide. Efficiencies. So again, new, what I've been doing is showing the actual details of all the efficiencies per committee. So within this one, we see that, $1.6 million from the leaf and yard waste diversion. This is basically leaf and waste is no longer allowed in the green bin. So we're actually saving on the processing costs. Previous to this, that will be going into the processing when we send external for organics. That's no longer there. So it's a savings. The workforce management strategy, as I talked about in other committees, this is where we've been looking at our overall gapping provision, looking at the time it takes to hire for staff. It's been a bit longer in the last couple of years. So now this is just kind of normalizing in this budget cycle. And then you have a various line items across the board where we see better efficiencies, whether it's from utilities on the facility side, fleet efficiencies from fuel and leveraging those costs, and then discretionary spending savings. And with that, now I'll pass it over to Alain. Next slide, please.
Merci, Cyril. Bon matin, tout le monde. So I'm going to be covering both forestry services and solid waste services. So as part of forestry services, Andrea Lanty-Seymour is here with us. Allison Downs and Tracy Schwetz are also available online when we get to the question period. And when we go through solid waste, Sheldon McDonald is also in the room joining me this morning. So when we look at the forestry services, just to pick up on what Cyril was indicating, of the budget, 17.5 of that budget is dedicated to maintaining our existing trees and our forestry operations. 2.3 million of the budget is allocated towards planting tree programs. And when we look at 2025, we've been in front of council with a number of new programs that have basically been outlined over the last couple of years, really focused on improving and increasing tree planting, especially in those challenging areas to be planting. So we've redesignated basically what used to be the commemorative tree planting program to be a tree dedicated program to offer residents with more options in terms of tree planting. We had a very successful Plant Your Place launch in 2025, and we're actually going to be doubling the number of trees that are going to be available through that program through 2026 from 1,250 trees to 2,500 trees, and we anticipate that continuing to grow over time. And we've also moved to be more proactive in terms of tree replacement programs within a right-of-way. And I know this is something that was very much supported by committee, because previously we would replace trees that were either damaged through weather events or other causes. And we basically put the onus on the residents to apply through the Trees and Trust program to be able to get the trees replanted. Now we're taking a lot more of a proactive approach, that when we know that trees have been taken out, we do work with the residents and also the councillor's office in terms of trying to get those trees reestablished. The other highlight that I wanted to show in terms of our ongoing efforts to try to maximize any opportunity that's available to us in terms of planting more trees, and also taking some of the load off of the city in terms of our current cost, is through the recent partnership that we signed with Canada Forest Trust Corporation. So this is Ottawa is the first municipality in Canada to enter into such agreement with Canada Forest Trust. And we will see through 2026 basically the opportunities through that program, and we're going to be able to keep committee and council up to date as we see basically the proceeds of that program unfold. Prochaine diapositive. Maintenant pour le service des déchets solides. Prochaine diapositive.
And now for the solid
So
waste.
when we look at solid waste services, the overall budget for solid waste services is 117 million. And I just want to focus on a few elements that we have on the slide. One is with council approving the solid waste master plan, we are very much in implementation mode. There's $2 million that's being allocated as part of this budget to continue to advance the actions that have been approved by committee and council through the solid waste master plan. We're also seeing significant investments in Trail Road. Of the 25 million, about 20 million of that is for the development of cell 5B at Trail to be able to meet the continued demands from a waste perspective. And one of the key initiatives that I want to highlight is 150,000 that we're allocating for these 6 micro events related to our hazardous waste depot. We certainly hear every year some of the concerns, especially in the downtown, in terms of how do we make the hazardous waste events more accessible to people that may not have vehicles. So we are actually trying through 2026 these micro events. These are going to be really walk-up events, and from the experience that we gain through those events, we're going to be able to basically adapt the program as we move forward. These micro events are intended to complement our ongoing hazardous waste depot events that we offer also citywide. Certainly, there's always ongoing investments in terms of trying to divert waste away from our landfill. Cyril indicated basically some of the efficiencies that have been gained by taking the leaf and yard waste out of the composting stream. So we're going to see more of that in 2026 when we encourage residents to provide basically leaf and yard waste separate from their green bin. We see 2 big benefits from that. One is we can certainly process the waste, the leaf and yard waste, through composting a lot more cost effectively than processing it with our green bin. And we also get the opportunity to create a byproduct of the composted material by mixing it with sand and creating topsoil. And we're able to reuse that topsoil. We've been using it at Trail with significant benefits. We've been testing it out also as part of our other operations. So there's value. We're trying to use that as a value and a commodity for the city to be able to reduce our costs on our projects. So with that, I will hand it over to my colleague, Debbie.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of committee. I will provide some highlights for the climate change and resiliency budget. I'm also joined by Nicole Hoover-Binash, who's here to support with your questions. Next slide, please. So this year's budget request includes $9 million to advance priority actions under the climate change master plan. So you'll recall that we came forward with two significant reports this fall. Council confirmed priorities for the climate change master plan budget, and as well a prioritization framework that determines how we select specific projects that are aligned with those priorities. The other thing I'd point out is that this budget also includes $3 million in new funding to allow us to kickstart the implementation of the Climate Ready Ottawa, which was Ottawa's resiliency strategy with Council also approved just in October. So of the total $9 million climate change master plan budget, there's approximately $5 million in total that will be directed towards implementation of Climate Ready Ottawa actions. And just to give you a sense of what those are, there'll be an assessment of 230 critical city facilities, and as well advancing climate risk assessments for the most at risk of those sites. We'll also be improving city facility emergency power reliability to ensure that those facilities are available and providing the necessary services during extreme weather events. We're going to be creating a new community preparedness grant program. We're also going to be enhancing parks with cooling features and developing a cooling strategy that will support the most vulnerable within our community. And finally, we're going to be increasing outreach to really drive take-up of the total investments in climate change and resiliency actions. Beyond the $5 million, there's $4 million that will fund key climate mitigation initiatives. These are aligned with that CCMP priorities that Council approved just earlier this fall. And they will include accelerating city building retrofits as a key priority, also launching a district energy strategy and new solar rooftop investments or projects. Funding will also support initiatives to strengthen community engagement and to increase existing program take-up aligned with energy evolution. So the 2026 budget also includes continued commitment to climate action by investing in community programs. So these are programs like Rain Ready Ottawa, the Community Environmental Grant Program, as well as low-rate loans to support residents who are undertaking energy retrofits on their homes. And that's through the Better Homes Ottawa program. So this $9 million budget proposed budget is important. It will advance our work, but it represents only a fraction of the city's total investment in climate action. So in 2026, more than $94 million will be invested in climate-related capital projects across the entire budget that's being proposed. These will reduce GHG emissions. They'll also strengthen climate resiliency. And this really reflects the city's commitment to embedding climate action across all departments and ensuring that it's something that we think about when we're advancing projects across the entire city. And then finally, our climate change and resiliency services team, working with departments across the organization, is also committed to continuous improvement and efficiency. And I want to just share one example of that with you. So in 2025, the team worked with departments and on energy efficiency initiatives and reduced the city's operating costs by $3.8 million through a variety of different initiatives. And with that, I will go to the next slide and turn it over to Cyril.
Thank you, Debbie. So now we're going to transition over to the rate side of the budget for this committee. So this is your drinking water, wastewater, stormwater. So overall, this total gross budget is $565 million. Some recoveries at $33 million and the revenue sources for $532, which brings you to a net requirement of $0. And why it's a net requirement of $0 is this is a fully funded program. So all the costs within these three services are recovered through user fees, that's your water, wastewater, stormwater bills, or DCs or other fees that we charge in terms of this program. That's why there's no pressure to the tax base. Again, it's fully funded from the rate side. This represents about a 6.5% increase overall. This budget is aligned to the rate long-range financial plan that was approved in June. And that plan had revenue fees increases for water at 2.7%, wastewater at 4.9%, storm at 7.6%, for an overall increase of 4.5% on those respective fees for those services. This budget does have some additional FTEs. There's 9 FTEs in this budget, mainly for wastewater. And this is, again, very much aligned to the approved rate LRFP that was brought forward in June. This is a very capital-intensive program, so those resources are needed to support the additional investments put forward in that program. The rate LRFP is a fully funded program in terms of the funding the required priority needs of the network, so that's where these additional supports are. And then with that budget, you see $305 million worth of capital investments, which is, again, an increase year over year from prior years and very much aligned to the rate LRFP. Next slide, please. This is how the overall budget is allocated to the 3 services. As I previously mentioned, drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater. Overall, on an aggregate gross level perspective, drinking water is increasing at 5%, waste at 6%, and storm at 9%. So again, this is the gross expenditure side of the equation. And then we have the full cost recovery from the recoveries and the revenue sources to bring the net requirement to 0. Next slide. This is the overall funding for the overall program. Main component is debt. We know that these infrastructure assets are typically 30, 40 years. It is a heavy capital program. The debt servicing on this program, the limit is 15%. So you often hear me talk about the provincial limit at 25%. Then the council has reduced that limit from a rate perspective to 15%, tax perspective to a 7.5%. Rate and tax combined, the limit is 8.5%. Don't want to lose you in numbers here. The main focus of today is the rate side. So again, the council threshold is 15%. We actually run at about 11.4% in 2024. For 2026, we're just shy going up to 11.7%. So even though we're making significant investments, it's still within the affordability, still within the affordable plan. And that's why we leverage debt for these assets. Debt on these assets is a much better use of debt because they last a lot longer. So, a 30, 40-year amortization, mortgage, if you will, is more affordable than a 20-year. So we try and leverage debt here, and that's why the debt ceiling is a little bit higher, but still within council's direction and still well below the provincial limit. Next slide, please. This is just basically a breakdown of the capital requirements for 2026. This varies year over year. Drinking water is the biggest one coming up for 2026. But it all depends on where projects are, programs are in terms of the needs, delivery of the prior year budgets. Even though wastewater is the biggest one, as I previously mentioned, with the 9 FTEs. Then we have the integrated component, which is the work that gets done under the roads. So we show the integrated here and over in the PWIC as well. And with that, I'll pass it over to Tammy.
Thank you, Cyril. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of committee. I'm pleased to present the 2026 draft budget for infrastructure and water services. As mentioned by Cyril, this covers the operating and capital rate funding budgets for drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater, as well as I'll be covering the tax-funded operating budgets for asset management and infrastructure services. With me today, I have all 4 directors from this department. We have Water Facilities and Treatment Services, Jen Nielsen, Water Linear and Customer Services, Cheryl Beam, Infrastructure Services, Karina Duclos, and Asset Management, Sue Johns. As you will recall, Council approved the Rate Long-Range Financial Plan in June 2025. That plan set the funding strategy to support the operational and capital needs for our rate infrastructure, ensuring we maintain and renew critical assets while supporting growth. For 2026, we are proposing operational investments that respond to the expanding capital program and to new provincial legislation requirements. That includes additional resources to advance the wastewater capital program and address maintenance needs across our aging infrastructure, and resources to support compliance with the Consolidated Linear Infrastructure Environmental Compliance Approval Regulations. Next slide, please. Drinking Water Services is responsible for producing and distributing drinking water through the city's central system and communal well systems. The Ottawa River supplies a central system of our 2 purification plants and produce an average of 295 million liters of safe drinking water every day. From these plants, water is delivered through more than 3,000 kilometers of water mains and pumping stations to over 950,000 customers. Several rural villages, including Munster Hamlet, Carp, Vars, parts of Richmond, and portions of Greeley, are served by communal wells drawing from deep aquifers. Investments in drinking water services support Council's priority for a green and resilient city. Highlights of the 2026 drinking water budget include $78.9 million in capital investment. That includes $24.5 million for water system rehab, including proactive transmission main repairs, $11.3 million for the renewal and treatment equipment at Lemieux and Britannia, $8.6 million for life cycle renewal and system improvements in the distribution system, $5.9 million for storage tank and reservoir upgrades, $5.1 million for pumping station retrofits and equipment replacement, and we also have $3.3 million for the carp treatment facility to support growth and reliability. Continuous improvement is a core value in our department, and I'd like to highlight 3 ongoing initiatives in drinking water services. First, the leak detection pilot uses advanced acoustic sensors and software to identify hidden leaks, filtering out background noise and pinpointing leak locations to reduce excavation costs and water loss. This also requires, we are able to proactively repair these leaks before they become problematic. Second, we are advancing the business case for bulk water improvements, introducing technology that will more accurately measure and invoice water usage at bulk fill stations, reducing lost revenue and improving service. And third, through our drinking water quality management system, we continue to embed ongoing improvements. This year, 27 new opportunities were identified through audits and review processes. Next slide, please. We can go to the next. Wastewater Services manages the city's wastewater collection system and operates the treatment facility at ROPEC, known as the Robert O. Pickard Environmental Center. This includes over 6,000 kilometers of sewer pipes, 90,000 maintenance holes, 100,000 catch basins, 1,600 stormwater outfalls, and more than 100 pumping, storage, and odor control facilities. ROPEC treats an average of 545 million liters of wastewater each day before releasing it safely to the Ottawa River. Highlights of the 2026 wastewater budget include $139.2 million in total capital investment. These include $87.2 million for the rehabilitation of ROPEC, including replacements, renewals, and cogeneration upgrades, $10.2 million for pumping station renewals, $7.9 million for collection system rehab, $7.5 million for the wet weather program aimed at reducing flooding and combined sewer overflows, and $3.4 million for sanitary sewer rehab. In terms of continuous improvement, the team modernized the residential protective plumbing and compassionate grant programs earlier this year to enhance financial support for residents before and after flooding events. We also completed an options analysis for the RV hauled waste program, leading to its elimination to achieve savings, reduce public traffic at ROPEC, and improve site safety and security. Next slide, please. And again, Stormwater Services manages the city's stormwater facilities, laboratory, and municipal drainage systems. Les services des eaux pluviales sont responsables de la gestion des installations.
Stormwater Services were responsible for the management of stormwater, for the laboratory, and for municipal drainage systems.
The 2026 draft budget includes $60 million in stormwater investments, including $36.5 million for life cycle renewal of drainage culverts, $12.7 million for the rehab and renewal of the stormwater collection system, and $6 million for stormwater management facilities that reduce flooding risk, mitigate erosion, and improve water quality. Stormwater Services continues to advance modeling and analysis tools. Staff are using two-dimensional simulations that integrate rainfall, runoff, sewer capture, climate change scenarios, and low-impact development options to better identify flood risks at the level of individual buildings. We also continue to grow our LID program and green infrastructure programs, including more rain-ready installations on private property, new pilot techniques on city sites and road projects, collaboration with developers to integrate more LIDs, and Ottawa-specific guidance to address our local conditions. We are also proposing improvements to the city's rain gauge network, enhancing our ability to measure rainfall intensity, duration, and distribution across 28 sites. Next slide, please. And again. We will now move on to the tax-funded budget for infrastructure services and asset management. This committee approves the operating budgets for both asset management and infrastructure services. Asset management maintains the city's asset inventory, conducts performance assessments, develops risk-based renewal strategies, and defines investment needs for municipal infrastructure valued at $90 billion. Infrastructure Services delivers new and renewed municipal infrastructure, approximately $700 million in projects each year, funded through city budgets and provincial federal stimulus programs. Asset Management's building portfolio includes $2.85 million in energy management investments aimed at reducing energy intensity, lowering costs, and decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. Improvements include lighting upgrades, HVAC replacements, furnace upgrades, and new makeup air units. The heat pump adoption program continues to reduce emissions by prioritizing heat pump installations where feasible, often achieving 70% to 85% greenhouse gas reductions through hybrid systems. Infrastructure Services implemented an enhanced continuous improvement process in 2024. To date, over 200 improvement opportunities have been identified, with 160 already implemented, strengthening both efficiency and effectiveness of our processes. This process, reinforces our commitment to quality and continuous improvement across all infrastructure services projects. Next slide, please. So this concludes our budget presentation for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tammy, Elaine, Debbie, and Cyril. A really comprehensive presentation, and appreciate all the detail in there. I'm sure there'll be questions about more detail. I'm going to ask the vice chair to read in the roadmap motions, and then we'll move immediately to delegations. And the first delegation would be Harper Jean Tobin. So I'll just ask them to prepare themselves. And Marty, you can go ahead and read. Tax.
Okay, this is the 2026 budget motion for tax supported. Be it resolved that the Environment and Climate Change Committee recommend that Council, sitting as Committee of the Whole, approve the Environment and Climate Change Committee 2026 tax supported draft operating and capital budget as follows. Number 1, Infrastructure and Water Services Department operating budget as follows. A, General Manager's Office and Business and Technical Support Services operating resource requirement, page 2. B, Infrastructure Services. 1, user fees. 2, operating resource requirement. C, asset management services. 1, user fees. 2, operating resource requirement. 2, Strategic Initiatives Department, Climate Change and Resiliency operating resource requirement, which is on page 11. Number 3, Public Works Department operating budget as follows. A, Solid Waste Services, subsection 1, user fees, page 15 to 16. Subsection 2, operating resource requirements, page 13 to 14. B, Forestry Services, subsection 1, user fees, page 19. Subsection 2, operating resource requirement, page 18. And 4, Environment and Climate Change Committee tax-supported capital budget on page 20. Individual projects listed on pages 43 to 50, environment, and pages 52 to 60, solid waste. Rate supported 2026 budget motion. Be it resolved that the Environment and Climate Change Committee recommend that Council, sitting as Committee of the Whole, approve the Environment and Climate Change Committee 2026 rate-supported draft operating and capital budget as follows. Number 1, Infrastructure and Water Services Department drinking water services as follows. A, user fees, pages 3 to 6. B, operating resource requirement, page 2. 2, wastewater services as follows. A, user fees, pages 9 to 10. B, operating resource requirements, page 8. 3, stormwater, laboratory, and municipal drainage services as follows. A, user fees, pages 13 to 16. B, operating resource requirements, page 12. 4, the Environment and Climate Change Committee rate-supported capital budget on pages 17 to 20, individual projects listed on pages 33 to 61, drinking water services, 33 to 67, integrated water and wastewater, 69 to 89, stormwater services, and 91 to 123, wastewater services.
Yeah, that's a big roadmap. Thank you very much, Vice Chair Carr. So Harper Jean Tobin, you're up first for delegations. I'm not seeing them in person, though. I don't know that they're online either. So we will just move on to William Van Geest. If Harper comes later, we can have them up. So William, you're up first. The Executive Director of Ecology Ottawa. Nice to see you. Got 5 minutes to address committee.
Thank you, Chair. You can hear me okay? Great. So I want to first acknowledge that this meeting was shifted from several days after the budget tabling to now. This is a major improvement on last year, as we've had a few weeks now rather than just a few days to study the budget, a change that we actually requested last year at this time. So thank you. It's, of course, difficult to cram everything relevant to this budget into 5 minutes, so I'm going to speak to points in 3 main categories: solid waste, trees, and climate. On solid waste, 3 specific points. First, we need to increase funding for the Green Bin program in multi-residential units to accelerate its rollout. Our recently released waste audit shows that, quote, the most prevalent divertible material in the garbage stream is organic waste, and, quote, the multi-residential sector recorded the lowest green bin diversion rate. The current rollout plan extends to 2028. This should be completed in 2026. Of course, organics that end up in landfill are a main source of waste emissions. Second, we need to fund community groups already doing waste diversion work, as we've asked before, and make operations funding eligible. Council has been considering, of course, end-of-line waste management approaches, including landfilling and incineration, either of which will cost in the hundreds of millions. It's critical that we divert as much waste as possible, and community groups are doing the work already and very inexpensively. Third, we need a solution to reintroduce school recycling programs. I'm not sure the status of Council's motion exploring city investments here, but it would be good to see funding supporting this. In general, we urge increasing funding for the reduction and diversion elements of the Solid Waste Master Plan's action suites to accelerate these actions. Moving on to trees. We are today repeating our perennial call for an acceleration of the tree planting strategy. The recently released tree canopy mapping revealed that our overall urban canopy is decreasing. This when we know that the threats to our tree canopy posed by extreme weather will increase. In the last urban forest master plan management plan, I think, cited lack of resources for the city's slow progress on trees. This brings me to the third category, climate, and of course, specifically the CCMP Climate Change Master Plan Capital Fund. We, of course, support the increase to $9 million, although I'll point out that we're far off from our net zero emissions plan. Energy Evolution calls for annual corporate investments of $687 million. And much more of that of cumulative community-wide investments. Compared with the enormity of the threat that climate change poses, both its severity and breadth, our climate investments remain wholly inadequate. And of course, our climate numbers reflects this. The recently released GHG inventory showed that, quote, Ottawa is not expected to achieve the 2025 target of a 43% emissions reduction, end quote. To compound the difficulty, Council has imposed a really inordinate amount of scrutiny on the fund, for example, in demanding the prioritization framework. In terms of how to spend this fund, we've asked staff several times for a breakdown of this fund's spending, both for the last couple of years and those upcoming, but received no reply. Yet staff's recently released response to the CCMP audit stated that, quote, in the 2026 draft capital budget, what's before us. A dedicated envelope will be proposed to be allocated within the CCMP program account. The intent is to, quote continues, focus on implementing higher impact initiatives, including piloting innovative approaches with greater potential impact, end quote. So where will these innovative approaches come from? We think the city should engage the community for them, again, by providing funding. The funding should take multiple forms. First, fund the Climate Public Advisory Group. This will ensure stakeholders can participate to the full extent of their abilities and knowledge. Second, open funds for community projects in both adaptation and mitigation. We know that much adaptation work must be done locally. Think natural infrastructures like tiny forests or depaving projects or wildflower gardens. With mitigation, community emissions constitute 96% of Ottawa's total emissions, and yet the city is struggling to make progress here. Community funding could be administered by established organizations like the Ottawa Climate Action Fund or Ottawa Hydro. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the high performance development standards that Council already approved in 2023, but at the last moment prevented their implementation. Given all the housing development in our future and the household savings that come from improved efficiency, the HPDS are a major opportunity to reduce our emissions and shore up resiliency. Council wanted an impact. The HPDS would provide this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Councillor Kavanagh?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, William. You were talking about community association or community groups rather, who are assisting in helping us reduce and waste. Can you elaborate a bit on that? Because I do see that, and I just wanted to get an idea of how we can make better use of those groups.
Sure, yeah. So when we made this ask, I think about a year and a half ago, in conjunction with the Solid Waste Master Plan, I think at that time we mentioned groups like the Ottawa Tool Library, the Ottawa Outdoor Gear Library, folks like Gentle Ways, reducing food waste from restaurants, I believe, folks like Océan in Ottawa South, who for example, are taking pumpkins after Halloween, and on and on and on. These groups know the opportunities on the ground in their very communities for waste reduction, among many other kind of climate initiatives. I think one thing that we asked for at that time as well is operational funding for these groups. Funds like SEPGEP do provide funding for very small initiatives, and that's a start. But established groups like, again, the Tool Library or the Outdoor Gear Library, operational funding would provide stability for them to do their excellent work and inexpensive work over the long term. So those are the sorts of things that we had in mind.
Thank you. They're both in my ward, which is nice. No, I appreciate that because obviously it's not going to be in this budget because but I think we should look at what actually saves us money if it actually reduces waste. So these are things that we should look at.
Yeah, if I may, in comparison with the hundreds of millions of dollars of, landfill is one thing. The talk of incineration, I think we're up at about $800 million. I can't think that investments in those will be anywhere comparable to these diversion efforts, these very local diversion efforts that are, again, extremely inexpensive, huge return on investment.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for your questions. I'll ask you a couple as well on the green bin. Certainly appreciate your sentiment, and I know we all agree we want to roll that as fast as we can in multi-residential. It's at actually a very high percentage now that we've rolled that out and we've made it mandatory, luckily. But certainly by 2028, that's when we're sort of hoping everyone has this done. Obviously, to have it done sooner would be great and requires some changes for some older buildings that need to adopt that program. But any new buildings coming online they're 100% supposed to be taking in the green bin. And certainly appreciate your point as well about funding community groups. There is a grant based program coming more for preparedness for emergencies and working with community groups directly. So really appreciate your point on that. I think you're hoping that that's not just for that element, but for other low cost solutions that C3 has pointed out as well in partnering with groups. And I'm hoping, given staff's insistence on ensuring that we have that community partnership fully established into 2026, that can be part of that conversation. So just really appreciate your points on that too. On the piece about the green development standards and HPDS, I think you're right. It was a mistake not to implement that at the time. I will say Bill 60 has just come out, and that really limits municipalities' ability on outside the building envelope for green development standards. So, we need to push on, certainly on within the envelope wherever possible. I've asked staff to go back to check whatever is possible there to get more efficient builds inside the envelope. As I understand it, Bill 60 really limits us outside the envelope, which is so I've asked staff to be very specific about what we can and cannot do as a result of Bill 60, but I really appreciate your point there. And certainly on the trees and accelerating tree planting, I think people know that is a huge point that we need to do more of, and we're ramping up there, but the funds have to follow that ramp up, especially in areas that are lower on the tree equity analysis scores. So just thank you for your delegation. If you want to respond to anything I said, feel free. I just wanted to make sure that I've noted down your points, and we continue to try to progress in those areas.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Maybe just on the HPDS, I think Toronto would be the one to look at on this. Their staff are doing excellent things to work around this legislation that's, I think, just kind of backward, right? Whether it's Bill 60 or Bill 17. So yeah, that's what we're looking at for how to do this, how to implement, as you say, the parts of the HPDS that we're able to under the current regime.
Yeah, certainly. And I know that bill also removed some of Toronto's ability to implement some of these green roofs, for example. So definitely where we can, I want to see that come forward as information items. And then some of that has been restricted, unfortunately, and I think a poor short-sighted decision. So thank you again for delegating. Appreciate all you've done. Okay, next up is Angela Keller-Herzog, the Executive Director of Cafes, and there's also a PowerPoint accompanying her presentation.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's budget time again. My presentation will focus on the climate parts of budget. And I do support just about everything that William said in the previous delegation. Next slide, please. I think you all know the Cafes Network, so we'll go on. Next slide. So in terms of the recommendations that Cafes would have for you today, we recommend that the city publish a climate change master plan implementation breakdown. We think that given that we have a plan both on mitigation and adaptation side, and supposedly a pathway of how to meet our target, there should be a financial corollary to that. How are we allocating our impactful spending to get to target? And in particular, our question is, what is the spending breakdown allocation of the $9 million for CCMP implementation in 2026? We are not able to see this in any of the budget documentation that we have reviewed. Next, we would like to have a clearer linkage between spending and climate outcomes. And that also relates to the mention in the response to the auditor in terms of how we want to be impactful, right? That's the heart of that. Thirdly, and I think also very important, we would like to ensure that there's adequate human resources in the 2026 budget for doing the planning for the next cycle of CCMP. We're expecting a refresh in 2027, and I think to get to that work is not inconsiderable amount of work. So we need resources for that. And I would ask maybe that you can check with staff that is somewhere hidden in the budget. Next slide, please. So this slide, just to remind us again, emission reductions are not on track. We're right now in that middle segment of the diagram where emissions are rising, and it's not entirely clear how we are going to make those reductions to get back on track and what the financial story is. Next slide, please. I think this committee, I hardly need to remind you why climate action is not optional. There are thousands of people that have recently died in Southeast Asia due to flooding. In Ottawa, with the heat, that's probably the biggest threat to lives. But it's clear that climate change is now a public safety and a public health issue. Next slide, please. So in terms of the budget, there are many positive elements. And as has been mentioned, climate is cross-cutting across the budget. We're very happy to see the investments for flood prevention and updated floodplain mapping, for example. We're happy to see planning for phase 2 of the zero emission bus program, the investments in the greening of the municipal fleet, which will save us money, of course, acquisition of green space, and also the continued climate lens on capital projects and climate disclosure in the City of Ottawa annual budget. We're all happy to see, and there could be many more things on that list. Next slide, please. So in terms of problems, issues, again, it's an issue of transparency and lack of community engagement around communicating what this 9 million CCMP is for. And I should tell you that I have spent quite a lot of time reviewing the budget documents, trying to figure this out. I've been asked at a public meeting to speak on it, and it's very difficult to present and speak when there is no information. We've asked the mayor's office, I've asked my councillor's office, I have spoken with staff, and basically there is no clear breakdown information forthcoming. And I think this is a problem. I mean, we have many residents that are keenly concerned about climate change, and we would like to have much more clarity. And this budget has not provided that. Next slide, please. So I've now explained to you where our recommendations are coming from. And again, the last recommendation in terms of adequate human resources to do the considerable work of the refresh, those resources are needed in 2026. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Thanks very much, Angela. I'm not seeing questions, but I have a question for you. Just on the 9 million piece, I've asked for the same thing. Staff do have that information. I'm going to ask them today to be more detailed for where that's going to go and that spending plan. But in terms of your own view of where those things should be going, or your concerns within how we spend that money, what would you say?
Thank you for the question and also the future question to staff. So the main two areas that Ottawa's emissions are coming from are transportation and buildings. So on transportation, we have some money going into the greening of fleet. Cafes would like to see more money on transit. Transit needs to be not an isolated silo in a death spiral, but it needs to be part of the sort of growth vision of Ottawa. If we're planning to have hundreds of thousands in population increase, we need transit to work. Otherwise, we're going to have a hugely congested, malfunctioning city. So that is key. On the building side, I think your previous conversation with William Van Geest, you're talking about Bill 60 and restrictions from the province in terms of what we can do in green building standards. I think that is well taken. However, what the conversation has not touched on at all is the area of incentives. And I've touched base with Jason Burgraff, the executive director of GOBA, that is well known to you, probably more well known than me. And he is fully in support. If we can come up with green incentives for greener buildings, then they have no problem with that at all. So the question is, if we don't have the stick to use, then what kind of carrots can we use? And we know that in terms of like public investment, building better in the first place is so much more effective and efficient rather than subsidizing later these very expensive retrofits. So, and I don't think that any effort has gone into investigating what kind of incentives we could be doing for building better, more green, more energy efficient, more carbon efficient in Ottawa here.
Okay. No, thank you for your delegation. I know I had a conversation with staff recently about that, exactly that point, incentives. I know they're on that track and they want to get to the same place because of the restrictions from the province around formalizing the need to build better in the first place. Incentives can come as part of that, the building envelope in particular. So thank you for that. And I know we're going to get there. I'll ask some of the questions you've asked here to staff to make sure the details are out there. Councillor Kavanaugh has a question for you.
Yeah, just quickly, appreciate your comment about the silos because I feel strange talking about an environment committee budget, but we don't talk about transit. And yet that is an important part of it in terms of the overall health of our city. So just wanted to say, I agree with you. And that's one thing that I find problematic with just having the environment portfolio, because it should really be an umbrella for across the board. And yet, you know, we're not doing that, but just wanted to say thanks for raising that.
You're welcome.
Councillor Lowe.
Thanks very much, Chair. Hi, Angela. Thank you for your delegation. I noticed that you had made a comment about siloing public transit and environment. This is kind of in the same vein as my colleague's comments there. A few weeks, I think now ago, at Transit Committee, you may recall I moved a motion that speaks to accelerating our fleet procurement if it means opening up other propulsion options. So I'm curious, do we put the service first, or do we put the environmental goals of our fleet first?
Well, I don't think it's an either or, right? I think that we've discussed if we have increased ridership, that means less cars on the road, and that is already an environmental gain. So if we invest in increased service, that will get more ridership, that will then get less emissions and more cars off the road. So I think that there is actually a strategic alignment there. The tricky part where we don't really understand how it works is in terms of the budget and financing, right? So if we have an understanding that climate investments, it's horizontal, there's all kinds of other departments aside from what the strategic initiatives unit can do. So how do we make that budget leap? So if the city decides we want to put in, say, 50 million into climate, is there a way that to grab parts of that 50 million and say, hey, transit people, we think transit is super important for climate. We'd like to push 20 million over there. I don't know if, like, where would that conversation be? Where is that mechanism? And I think that if we are serious about wanting to deploy our financial resources in impactful ways, right? So we're talking about emissions reduced per dollar, then that kind of like mechanism where you can allocate the money where it is most impactful, even if it is in another department, would be very much needed.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Lowe. Thank you for your delegation, Angela. Our next delegation is Stephen Hazel with the Citizen Climate Council, C3, also with a PowerPoint. Welcome. You've got 5 minutes to address committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillors, for giving Citizen Climate Council an opportunity to speak with you this morning. We are a group of volunteers, residents, mainly seniors, that since 2019 have been doing research and analysis to find climate solutions and implement and promote their implementation at the municipal level. One thing that we've done that some of you may have seen is this so-called climate progress account, which we published in 2022, and it looked at progress of the city in addressing the 2019 climate emergency. So we have 3 messages. If I could go to the next slide. The first one aligns very much with what Angela was just saying, to plan for dramatically increased budget investments in climate resilience at the community and city levels. A second is to focus on budget investments on low-cost, win-win solutions that address the climate emergency. And thirdly, to fund accountability measures relating to the city's performance in meeting climate commitments. So I want to congratulate the mayor, councillors, staff on Climate Ready Ottawa and for the draft budget allocation of $9 million towards Climate Ready Ottawa. It's an important step for preparing Ottawa for the impacts of a changing climate, and it's a needed complement to the energy evolution and climate master plan. And I want to thank Chairman Menard in particular for the response to C3, to our letter of November 21st, most helpful in terms of our thinking on this. So there's been a number of plans developed by the city, but plans and strategies alone are not going to address the climate emergency. Budgets obviously have to assign adequate resources to address that emergency as global carbon pollution continues, even accelerates. We understand the city has significant financial restraints, but we still argue that Ottawa should strive to be Canada's natural capital by planning for dramatically increased budget investments in climate resilience at the community and at the city level. We know that the cost effectiveness of investing in Climate Ready Ottawa is beyond doubt. The city staff report from November concludes that investment in climate readiness saves 13 to 14 times future costs. So it's a big win in terms of cost saving. Risks to the city and residents will be much higher if critical resilience investments are deferred. So the C3 recommends, I think this is part of the plan already, that the city establish a specific fund to support resilience and adaptation action by local communities. So C3, we've got a number of ideas for low-cost actions that will yield significant community benefits and savings. A few of these are with respect to promoting and sharing information on the city website that homeowners and renters can use to protect their families, buildings, and properties from extreme climate events. Second has been touched on by William, the expand tree planting programs on both city and private properties. The mayor made a commitment to 1 million trees during the term of this council. 88,000 have been planted between 2022, 2024, in a 2-year period. So we're way, way short on that. A third is to integrate green or nature-based infrastructure into all infrastructure planning. And I appreciate the fact that there's a climate lens, but we think that more could be done. I mentioned the climate progress account, which summarized the City of Ottawa's response to the emergency declaration. A key finding in that report was that as follows: the 2018-2022 Council has not yet achieved coherent, transparent presentation of its climate budgets, activities, or results to the Ottawa community. We maintain that that conclusion applies just as well in December 25. So what we're recommending with respect to the budget 2026, and I realize it's late in the day, but that we need adequate funding to achieve those coherent, transparent presentation of climate budgets, activities, and results. And we support the proposed dashboard, but it should also include projects and actions led by communities. So I will stop there and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much for your delegation as well as the letter that you had sent in to council. I know staff are also seized with some of the issues that you've mentioned, and certainly were very helpful in responding and getting the details back on some of the areas that I know you're looking for. I'm hoping that we can get clarity and accountability on some of those programs being launched and into 2026. I know staff are committed to that as well. So I appreciate the advocacy to date from C3 and would love to see more in the years to come. I'm not seeing any other questions, but thank you very much for delegating today. Thank you, C. Oh, sure, go ahead.
One point that I meant to make was that there's a lot of red tape, Ottawa City red tape faced by community groups in these tree planting programs. Got a number of examples that we could provide, but it would be great if the city could just get out of the way a lot of the time and let folks plant trees.
Yeah, I know our forestry team have been trying to move in that direction, certainly. Definitely, I see it on the planting near Brewer, for example, along Bronson, right, where community members want to plant trees there on public property, and we go through a process with staff and then get approval. It happens, but it's a process, and certainly I think that has evolved over time. It used to be more difficult, and I think that as an example has been evolving. So I hear your point. If trees are a good thing, let's encourage their planting. And what's the process for that of encouraging community action at the same time with people who want to help? They want to volunteer their time and give back to both maintaining the existing tree canopy and planting new trees. So I know forestry is here and listening, certainly. So appreciate your comments there too. Thank you. Okay, so our last delegation today is James Scott McKillop, and then we'll move on to questions for staff from the budget. There's a PowerPoint there as well, and you've got 5 minutes to address committee.
Good morning. The next slide, please. My concerns, why aren't Ottawa residents aware of the tech involved in the Ottawa smart city, long and short-term harmful effects and societal impact and implications? Slide 3. Everything I'm showing you today relates to the biodigital convergence, otherwise known as the nano-bio-info-cogno experiment, meaning nanotech, biotech, information tech, and cognitive science. Slide 4. October 28, 2025, the National Defence Innovation Hub published its evolving strategy for Canada's capital region. Next slide, please. This document is a blueprint, a 5-year 2025-2030 strategy. Position the Ottawa region as the nation's premier defense hub. Next slide, please. Partners include City of Ottawa and Gatineau, collaborating with several post-secondary institutions in the area, including Carleton, Algonquin, U of O, and more. Next slide, please. Federal partners include DND, DRDC, RCMP, ISCD, FedDev Ontario. The investors should speak for themselves. Slide 8. Canada's only cluster of 4 NATO Diano test centers, including Area X, founded and operated by Invest Ottawa and 3 NRC labs involved in AI, quantum, cyber, drones, robotics, semiconductors, autonomous systems. For more info, contact Sonia Shorey, President CEO of Invest Ottawa. Slide 9. Next slide. Collaborating with Provectus, Robotics, Erdito, Cybersecurity, and several government agencies. Slide 10, including CSC, DND, DRDC, and ISED. Slide 11, please. In partnership with Drone Robotics, the Drone Advanced Robotics Testing and Training, the first center in Canada to integrate NIST standards. Next slide, please. Established by Invest Ottawa and City of Ottawa is the Ottawa Smart Farm, bringing together autonomous systems, sensors, IoT tech, telecommunications, big data, robotics, drones, and more. Slide 13. Equipped with several technologies, including multi-access edge computing, cybersecurity, and 5G solutions, including MM waves from Nokia and Ericsson. Next slide. The team has also developed a digital twin of Area X, where sensor configurations and autonomous driving algorithms can be tested in this simulation. Slide 15. This is Jean-Francois Dion, geospatial strategist from the city of Ottawa, working on Ottawa's digital twin. Slide 16. Jean-Francois Dion claims Ottawa is the national leader with digital twins. In fact, his inspectors are collecting new data daily and is operating at scale. Slide 17. Here's Randall Roger, program manager of Ottawa's digital twin. Slide 18. Ottawa's digital twin. Slide 19. Digital twin goals. Near the bottom, it states predicting climate change. That's why I'm here. Slide 20, reality capture and data intelligence, citywide high resolution imagery with drones and mobile handheld laser scanners. Slide 21, digital twin in collaboration with the climate change unit and Ottawa Public Health. Slide 22, data standardization. Slide 23, Dr. Francois Coley, SCC Governing Council member of the IEC, is responsible for international standards surrounding biodigital convergence and digital twins. Next slide. Digital representations of a target entity with data connections enable convergence between physical and digital states. Slide 25. Digital twins in brief. A digital twin is a digital representation of a real-world entity or system, an evolving digital profile of the historical and current behavior of physical object and processes. DTs is an enabler of smart everything everywhere. Slide 26. Digital twin tech like 2.0, visualization, sensing, internet interactions, simulation, of course, security. Slide 27. Have you met your human digital twin? Slide 28. DTs are also used in environmental monitoring, for clean water and sanitation, UN SDG number 6. Slide 29. According to the IEC, IoT and DTs and environmental monitoring done for UN Sustainability Goal 3, good health and well-being. Slide 30. These IoT systems enable smart everything everywhere. Slide 31, including smart society, smart payments, healthcare, and energy. Slide 32, relevant technical committees involved from IEC, ISO. Slide 33. Meet Martin Meyer, full professor at IRS, head of the Optical Zeitgeist Laboratory in Montreal, IEEE and NSERC. He calls Smart Society Society 5.0.
James, I'll just ask you to finish up.
Slide 34. This is referring to a paper from Martin he named Society 5.0 on the internet, as if people mattered, where he brings up robonomics, social human and robot interactions, blockchain, crypto, and reward-based tokens. Slide 35. Martin studies tokenized digital twins of assets and access rights in the physical and digital law should a weapon.
Just asking you to finish up. I'll just see if the committee has any questions for you. We've had your slides on for that 5 minutes. You're just over time. So just seeing if folks have questions at this time. Just check. Okay. Councillor Hill has a question.
Yes.
Yeah. James, I know this, you've been coming out for a number of committee meetings. I appreciate the time and effort that you put into these presentations. And to be quite honest with you, I'd like to have a follow-up with you offline. So I would appreciate if you could send me an email, david.hill@ottawa.ca. I'd like to hear a little bit more about this and talk to you in a little bit more detail, okay?
I would absolutely love that. I actually have a card here with my information on it. And a friend of mine.
If you give that to the committee clerk today, I'll take that. We'll follow up and we'll have an offline conversation. Thank you for your time delegating today.
I appreciate that. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you very much for the delegation. Thank you, Councillor Hill. I'm just seeing, I'm wondering if Harper Jean Tobin is potentially online now. We'll just do one last call for the first delegate who signed up. Okay, still not seeing them. So, okay, that's the end of our delegations. We're going to move now to questions of staff from committee members. And we can start off when folks have a question. I'll just ask a quick question off the top around the, and Councillor Lowe's on the board, but I just wanted, on the delegations, they asked several questions. If staff can just go through the investment of the $9 million breakdown, just to start us off, that would be helpful. And I'll move to Councillor Lowe right after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. I'm happy to provide a breakdown. I mean, it'll be relatively high level, but I think it'll respond to the questions being raised. So as I mentioned in the presentation, there's the breakdown, the overall breakdown is 5 million on the resiliency side and 4 million on the energy evolution side, if you will. In terms of the resiliency spend plan, this is where we have incremental 3 million new investment, bringing that to the total 5 million. The investments are focused in a few key areas. Significant amount of funding, about $1.5 million directed towards extreme weather preparedness. And this includes things like training, equipment, mobile generators, to ensure that we're able to respond with agility and quickly when there are power outages across the city, and ensure that those essential services are maintained and continue to be provided. Another area where there's significant funding being directed towards or proposed to be directed towards is top-ups to planned park infrastructure to integrate cooling features into those parks. And that's about a $1 million investment. And that's to ensure that residents across the city are able to cool when there are extreme heat events. Another area of significant investment relates to the protection of trees and natural assets from wildfire, drought, storms, diseases, et cetera. That's about a $1 million investment as well. And it includes as well a wildfire risk mitigation plan to ensure that we're really looking at what are the actions that we can undertake to proactively protect our natural assets and trees from forest fires, and obviously the city and residents as well in taking those measures. Other areas where there's support is 300,000 planned for additional support for air conditioners for at-risk communities. And there's also 600,000 that is planned for community preparedness. So really working with community groups to ensure that those communities are taking action to be ready as well. So that's on the resiliency side of things. In terms of the mitigation spend plan, so related to energy evolution, that's a 4 million total envelope. There's 2 million that's really being directed towards the focus that is proposed on building retrofits. So that was something that we brought forward to council in the fall when we responded to a couple of the questions that the Auditor General had put forward. And so 2 million really directed towards the building retrofit work. Some of that is recommissioning and decarbonization pathway studies to help us understand what's the best way to enhance existing facilities and to get to no carbon within some of our facilities. There's also $1 million to support green fleet electrification and upgrades to cities' facilities to support that. There's about 250,000 for district energy strategy. So those are kind of like the high level parts of it. And then a number of smaller investments related to mitigation as well.
Thanks for being detailed on that. It's appreciated. And obviously, this is not the only climate investments in the city's budget. There's $12 million in total to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, $32 million to strengthen climate resiliency, and $50 million supporting both mitigation and adaptation outcomes within the broader budget in other areas as well, adding to the nearly $800 million in investments over this term of council on climate change supportive measures. Councillor Lowe, I'll move to you now. Sorry about that. Just people didn't have hands on the board at the time, but over to you, then over to Councillor Brockington.
No, everyone was clamoring for those hands there on Zoom. I think no one wants to be the first. Anyway, I guess I'll start off with a few questions and a comment. You noted that there are some cooling strategies for parks. That's super interesting to me. For example, I have a park where a box was installed. They spent all that money and then nothing sort of continued. We can talk about that separately. But when we're choosing the most vulnerable communities, or when we're determining what are the most vulnerable communities, how does that get determined? Are we going by the neighborhood whatever index that was? I don't remember the name of it. The ONS, the neighborhood survey, or are there sort of other factors that you'll use to help determine what communities get these investments?
I'm going to start and then turn over to Nicole to provide additional detail. So with regards to when we're determining the neighborhoods, we do make use of the equity index to understand the, demographics within certain neighborhoods and understand what priority neighborhoods. We work closely with our colleagues in Community and Social Services Department as well. So there's always a lot of collaboration to really understand how to direct the funding to those most in need. And then perhaps I'll just turn it over to Nicole, see if there's any additional details she wanted to provide.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. So the only thing I'll add to that as well, we also layer over using that NEI information is our canopy cover data. So we have our most recent canopy cover data, as members of committee will recall. We tabled that with council earlier this fall. We also overlay that as an understanding, really to try to hone into those areas that generally have lower access to cooling features.
Okay, no, understood. My general wish is that this would be spread, fairly reasonably evenly across the city, because there are parts of the city outside of the green belt that can also be considered vulnerable, and sometimes these are not as visible, and it makes it a little more makes them even more vulnerable because they're not seen. Anyway, the solar projects on buildings is super interesting, and I'm curious if that includes where we're appropriate, if that includes something over our parking lots as well, or if it's too too early.
Through the chair. So I'm not sure if we have any planned over parking lots currently. There are 3 projects that are in design phase and going to be implemented soon. One of them is here at City Hall on the rooftop. Nicole, over to you for elaboration.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. So as Debbie mentioned, we do have 3 projects. We are looking to advance further assessment next year on up to about 9 additional potential projects. And the team is certainly currently also looking if there are opportunities to help support some of those over parking. They have assessed some opportunities to date. There have been challenges with that, but certainly it is something we're going to continue looking at opportunities.
Okay, understood. And lastly, just a comment. I know that next year we are going to require the separation of leaf and yard waste from the green bin. This is something that's going to need to be communicated very well in that one, we're not stopping the collection of leaf and yard waste, because that was the misunderstanding last year, and that I remember raised a bit of a firestorm. That is something that has to be communicated very clearly, and then also to the why, like the why are we asking residents to take this extra step? Most people do separate out their leaf and yard waste when it's really, really heavy, during peak season, I guess. But rest of the year, most people don't, right? They just put it as a regular part of the green bin. But communicating that, we are still going to collect it, but separately, and then 2, why, and of course highlighting the savings in money that will come out of this is a very good idea, given this year's experience. So thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Lowe. I had the same concern at the time around the separation. I did have to ask a lot of questions to staff on it. I don't know, did you want to just say anything about that? I know, like, we're already there now, so but I don't know if people are as aware as they should be on it. Like residents understanding where they should put their leaf and yard waste, because we had changed it at one point to put it in the green bin to fill up the kind of quota at our renewable our green bin facility, and then now it's been removed. So Elaine, did you want to just comment on that?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And I think what you're going to see from solid wastes in 2026 is a lot of communication, because we're going through a lot of transitions in 2026. Certainly with the new collection contract going out, that's where we're going to be asking residents to separate the leaf and yard waste from the green bin. And certainly the why is because at the end of the day, it's cost us a heck of a lot less money to be able to process the leaf and yard waste at Barnesdale than it does through the composting facility. We're also going through basically the IPR in terms of the individual producer responsibility transition around recycling. So there's also going to have to be a lot of communication on that piece so that it's clear for residents. So your point is very well taken, and you can expect basically a lot of communication, a lot of toolkits also being provided through your offices.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, sir.
Great questions, Councillor. Councillor Brockington.
Can staff just remind us what the comms plan is for the change to waste collection in 2026. When we last spoke about this a couple of months ago, we were informed the paper waste calendar was no longer going to be issued in 2026. It was going to be online. I had urged staff to consider a publication that combined both City of Ottawa contacts and circular materials to avoid a tsunami of calls that our offices are going to get in the new year if it's not clear to residents who's responsible for what. So what comms products are going to be issued imminently to educate the public?
Thank you for the question. So I think we've already begun some of that comms distribution and information where materials are being shared as we become aware. So as we reported in the fall, circular materials through Miller Waste are going to be the responsible bodies for the recycling collection, and they are standing up their call center as well as standing up their website. So as information comes through, we're sharing with the councillor's office so that you're able to push out in your newsletters and your communications to residents. We're working closely with our partners in PIMR as well as Service Ottawa in order to help ensure that this change for our residents is as seamless as possible. Recognizing that starting in January, residents won't be calling 311 or emailing 311 if there's an issue with the recycling, but going through circular materials. So working closely in order to ensure that when residents by default go to their tried and trusted Service Ottawa contacts, they will be gently redirected to circular materials in order to put in their inquiry, whether it's a question about the collection of the recycling or needing a new bin. So we are working closely with Service Ottawa in order to ensure that communication is as seamless as possible. And we recognize that in January, there will be calls coming in that need to be redirected, and we're making sure that councillors and residents have the best information possible.
I appreciate that reply, Chair. It's this December is a challenging month to inform the public of significant changes that are coming. And even if we have to spend money to create fridge magnets or bookmarks or material that has circular materials contact information on them, something they should be doing, it will save the City of Ottawa time and effort in the long run by reducing that volume. And I just fear that the public will continue to call 311. And unless we have products that we can share with them that says, here's what the City of Ottawa is responsible for, here's what circular materials is responsible for, it's going to take quite some time to educate the public. What's going to happen with the stockpile of blue and black bins as of December 31st?
Thank you for the question. So any blue and black bins that we have in our stock, we're basically working with Miller Waste to sell those assets over to them. So basically, they will be in use by Miller because those are the bins, the sizing. They won't have the decal, the City of Ottawa decal on them, but those assets that currently are in our stock will be transferred to Miller for their use.
Excellent. Thank you. The City of Ottawa has printed material informing homeowners who live in homes pre-1955 about lead and lead in the water and lead testing. In addition to those hard copy pamphlets, can I be reminded what type of outreach the city does to make residents who live in buildings pre-1955 that the testing service is available free of charge and that they need to be aware of this? What additionally can we do to make people aware? When I have these flyers on my community tables, people are surprised. They take one, they're very motivated to follow up. But again, how many people are aware that this service exists? Do you put a flyer in their water bills? Is there something we can supplement in the tax bill envelope? What else can we do?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. The councillor is referring to we do have a lead pipe replacement program. So it is exactly as described by the councillor. And there is information on our website in terms of what those house owners could do if, and also to test whether or not they can check if their internal plumbing is serviced by a lead service or not. They can also call 311, and that is a service that we would do for them as well. We have done mailouts in the past, so I don't have the details right in front of me, but I will take that away to take a look at if we're due for another mailout. And also what we do is you will have seen in our fully integrated program in the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, where our full integrated program is included. And a lot of the water-related infrastructure renewal is for aging infrastructure, and also if lead service pipes are found to be there as well. And so through those integrated projects, we also notify the residents to let them know that they could have a lead service, and if they would like to take advantage of the program and replace their lead service at the same time as we're replacing the city asset, that's also a program. But if it's okay with the councillor, we can certainly circle back to your office with any specifics for future mailout.
Well, I appreciate that. And the question is always in the context, do you have enough resources in the upcoming budget year to do that? I think what the city does is very good. My concern I'm articulating today is I'm not convinced everyone who should be aware of the program is aware. So how else can we maximize that? My last question now, and then I'll yield and I'll come back. The most famous stormwater pond in Ottawa is Celebration in Celebration Park in River Ward, known for its goldfish, the volumes of goldfish. That's not an issue I'm raising today, but just that that's why it's famous. But this human-made pond has a rubber liner on the bottom, and that rubber liner has a small tear. So the water of the pond throughout the year cannot be retained to any substantial levels. The pond was built, yes, it serves a stormwater purpose, but is very aesthetically pleasing to neighbors. And staff that I've worked with for years have just said, we're aware what needs to be done, but given all the other priorities that your department is facing, it doesn't rise to the top of the list. How can a project like this, which we all acknowledge should be fixed, but will never become a priority, get prioritized at some point? Because I get pressure that it should be fixed, but again, we'd rather fix aged sewer pipes than stormwater pod liner.
Mr. Chair, so we do have separate funding for sanitary sewers and stormwater. So those are separate rates, sanitary and storm. At this point in time, part of the storm pond systems is to retain water. So there's a volumetric portion of what that pond will do, or all of our ponds regarding stormwater management. And they also provide a quality improvement as well. And so as water is retained or filtered, there's less sediment that is ultimately discharged to the natural water environment. So at this point in time, the pond is performing both its volumetric and its quality performance metrics. If that were to change and we were to start to see a decline in that performance and water quality, that would certainly change the risk profile of that project.
Okay. Yeah, Councillor has a direction for later on. Okay, Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the circular materials, which is taking over in January, can you remind me what the savings is for us in terms of we are no longer taking on black and blue bins? What's the overall savings on that?
Chair, I can start and maybe either Shelley or Cyril can fill in. Right now, you're not really seeing a savings in the budget because while we don't incur the expense, we also don't incur the revenues that came with recycling. So prior to circular materials taking it over, this year there were two main funding sources for recycling. One was through Stewardship Ottawa, and the other one was through the sale of recyclable materials. And that's essentially what offsetted the cost. So at the end, we don't incur costs, but we also don't get the revenue.
Okay, so we've lost that revenue of the
commodities,
paper and the metal, et cetera. Okay, thank you. In terms of transit, which is a separate budget, is there any way to incorporate that into our monitoring for the environment to show that we're in climate change and report it to this committee? Because it's a huge part when we increase ridership, when we increase having people not use cars, that makes a big difference. And I just want to know if it's been looked at.
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor. If I may just, there are a couple of ways that we ensure that, we're looking at this holistically. So one, there is a climate change and resiliency executive committee that meets on a regular basis and includes the general managers of all departments, as well as the chief medical officer. So Ottawa Public Health is represented there as well. And that committee has oversight of the overall CCMP budget and really looking at how do we direct investments to ensure that we're achieving the best results. When we came forward in the fall with the climate change master plan, and we provided updates in terms of the GHG emissions and whatnot, we do look at transit, and we do look at what are the investments that can support either driving up ridership. That was one of the actions that we actually identified specifically for next year, is really trying to increase uptake of all of the investments the council has made that do support reduced GHG emissions, and that really does include transit ridership. But we do look at this holistically. It is a whole city, and the climate change and resiliency team, which is led by Nicole Hoover-Benache, their role really is to work across all departments to drive the climate change results across the department. In terms of what we can bring back to the committee, let me take that away and work with the chair to see what we can do as well.
Thank you. And I think we'll have an opportunity if in 2026 we have a portion of stage 2 open, the east, not counting on the west right now, wishing, but that would be, I think it would be very significant if we use that as a goal to basically justify what we just spent and make sure that it's working to serve people. So, but also because it will help ultimately for climate change, which was the purpose of the whole exercise. So I'd love to see that, and I'm sure that my colleagues would too. So thank you. It was raised in our delegations about community groups that help out. And I see it in the ward. It also means community involvement, and there's just so many ways. I don't think it costs a lot, and I'm realistic, it's not this budget, but we should look at this for the future because so much can be done at the micro level. In fact, anything important starts at the micro level. So I see so many projects of, my colleagues and in my ward as well, but I think there's ways to do incentives, and I think that we should look at that. I think it will make a difference for climate change. We see it in small ways, like even just our cleanups and, clean up the capitals, things like that. But we can expand it so much with climate change as the target. And the investments we could make could save literally millions if we're doing it right. Anyway, I'm not preaching, but I want it to be thought about. Is that something that we could look at?
Through the chair. Thank you, Councillor. Agreed. There's definitely, we know that we can't achieve our climate change goals without working with others and working through others. And so that's a key priority. When council approved the priorities for climate change back in September, there were 3 priorities. One was really focused on implementing Climate Ready Ottawa. The other was continuing in some very focused areas for energy evolution, building retrofits being one of them. And the third was partnerships. And that's to invest in strategic partnerships, but they're big and small, and they're working through community groups within each of the streams, both mitigation and adaptation. We do currently have programs that support residents and community groups, and intend to continue that. The other thing I just raise is that there will be a staff-led working group that is focused on the CCMP, so Climate Change Master Plan. And we intend to have that set up by the end of Q1 of 2026. And that's a really good forum to explore these opportunities to work through community groups and to achieve our goals.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to hear also that the lead pipe program is still continuing. When I lived in Carlington, I got put on a wait list for it. So, and the only way you could get moved up is if you said you were pregnant, and I wouldn't go there. So, so I hope that it's moving faster. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Cavanaugh, for bringing out some of those points that delegations were asking about too, and appreciate staff's response on that.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation today. I agree with many of the points that we've heard today. I think we do a terrific job in our waste department, and we know our phones are going to explode because we do such a terrific job. Come the first with the transition, it's going to be much more challenging. So kudos to staff that have performed all the functions, and Godspeed for the next evolution on the first. I agree with Riley's point and Teresa's point. It's going to be a challenge, and we want to make sure we direct them to the appropriate people. Do we know also if Taggart Miller, or I don't even know who it is anymore, if they're going to replace bins at the rate that we do as well? Just to make sure it's out there, because I think that's one service that we did a great job on.
Thank you for the question. So that certainly is something we're circling back on what their service standards are, recognizing they have a contract with Circular Materials. So it'll be important for us to understand what those requirements are. So then that way, should a resident have an inquiry based on how quickly can they get a bin replaced, that the various councillors' office have that information as well. So we would hope that it would be the same as us within within 24 hours, because we're wanting to ensure that residents have a spot to put their recycling materials.
Yeah. To Andre, the team, all those guys out there, I tell you, before I hung the phone up, the new bin would be in their laneway all the time. So it was one thing that we always got to celebrate, how great a service that was, and I hope it continues. And I see Nicole smiling over there, because we remember back in the day when we brought in going to bi-weekly, even looking at how recycling's collected. I think it was the 1 through 7s and bantering through all that. So do we know what their plastics will accept? Is it the same? Have they changed some of the standards? Forgive me.
Thank you. So it is going to be an enhanced recycling service, and we understand that there will be new products. And so that information is on the Circular Materials website. I don't want to start rhyming off, because there were some adjustments that they've made. So wanting to point the residents to that in order to ensure that they have the latest information. But as indicated, it is an enhanced service. Therefore, more products are able to be recycled, which is a great thing. And we'll ensure that the residents have the latest information on that.
Great, thank you. And last, on trees, we all love trees. It's like the hot topic is trees, and thanks to the chair, I know you want to plant trees like crazy, and I know it frustrates you at times that we can't just simply run out and plant them in a park wherever we want. There might be an NCC park. So thank you, Chair, for that. And that, to some of the delegation's points, we're really trying to push as hard as we can to get trees in the ground and get some canopy in place. It's, if we could just throw bags of trees out and let people plant them everywhere, I'm sure that would go quicker, but we do have to follow a whole series of regulations to ensure they're put in the appropriate spots, that they're not at the bottom of a toboggan hill, for example, or we have to have, there's a whole series of rules to be able to go around tree planting. And I know we're doing our best to get it more efficient and get people to get trees. But are we moving as quick as humanly possible on this?
Chair, when it comes to trees, yes. And I think where you've seen progress is both on the city front in terms of where we plant trees. And obviously, if we're planting them on city property, yes, there's planting that needs to take place, not just in terms of the planting effort, but also the species and all that, because we want to make sure that the trees that we plant will be there for decades and decades. What this council has done is basically put more focus also on creating programs that provide residents with the opportunities to be able to plant trees. So Plant Your Place is basically was the first year that we launched that program. We had over 1,200 trees that were given out. We're actually doubling the program for this coming year through the budget. And we will continue to adjust that program based on the demand. We certainly have more people that wanted trees than we could hand out. So we'll be able to assess, especially after this year, in terms of what is that continued demand for trees, because we appreciate that we're still limited in terms of where we can plant our trees. So the more that people can plant on their within their property, it benefits everyone.
Yeah, and it's very easy. Everybody, I know my wife's watching at home, and I'll butcher the name of it. I got a ginkgo biloba or something like this in my lawn, and 3 years it's surviving great. Very easy to do. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor King.
Thank you so much, Chair, and I really want to applaud the work that you're doing as well as staff on this budget, because this budget definitely reflects the enormous challenge of maintaining and renewing aging infrastructure while also delivering essential environmental services, while at the same time responding to the climate emergency, all while managing affordability pressures on residents. And we appreciate the hard work that's been undertaken by staff to try to put all of these elements into balance. The budget obviously requires difficult trade-offs, including infrastructure investment needs that exceed available resources. Rate increases are necessary but create affordability challenges. And of course, climate action is urgent but is inadequately resourced. I mean, we could not within the prospect of the budget before us really deal with the climate change challenge as a municipality. Obviously, we need all partners working together. But I do think there are areas of focus that we should be honed on. And Councillor Tierney was talking about trees, so I'd like to ask some questions about that. I know our urban forestry management plan targets a 40% canopy cover by 2046, but we've heard one of the delegations noting that our canopy is decreasing. I'm just wondering, are we on track with the specific targets that we have within our management plan, and whether the budget is really adequate to deal with our level of ambition around tree planting and tree management?
Thank you for the question. So on the urban forest management plan, I'll comment on that and maybe turn over to my colleague, Mr. Gantier, for some additional detail with regards to the tree planting in the budget. So the target is 40% tree canopy cover. And as we reported in the fall, we're holding relatively consistent to where we were previously. So we haven't lost tree canopy, but we haven't progressed either to get to that 40% target. We did recommend, and council did approve, the applying an equity lens in order to address those neighborhoods where we have the lowest tree coverage and where there are population groups who would be more vulnerable to the heat effects as well. So we're really trying to align the efforts to where we think that we can provide the greatest benefits to people and to, those community groups or those population groups who would be more vulnerable to the effects of heat, as an example. In terms of the tree planting budget and how we're progressing there, I'll turn it over to Alain.
Thanks, Debbie. So for me, what's in the budget is basically the programs that council has approved are actually funded through the budget. And just a clarification to one of the delegations, just through the forestry services team alone, we plant about 80,000 trees annually. So that doesn't even include basically things that are planted through the development process or through my colleagues' team in terms of Tammy, in terms of the reconstruction projects. I think where we've this term of council, there's really been a shift is around the quality of the trees in terms of the quality of the plantings. We can produce very significant numbers of seedlings that we can be planting, and that certainly is part of the strategy. I think where we're at is if we want to be able to increase the canopy cover, especially in the urban area, those trees tend to be a lot more complicated to be able to plant and to plant. But they're vitally important if we want to be able to get the benefits of the urban forest management plan. And that's where working with the community becomes so important, because in some cases we need them to be planting on their property to be able to get as many trees as we can, especially in denser areas.
So just as a supplemental question, I guess what you're saying is that obviously with seeing climate change increasing and creating more stress on the trees, higher mortality rates and fire risk, that the budget is adequately addressing species diversification, as well as watering requirements, as well as pest and disease monitoring, as well as storm damage response capacity?
Mr. Chair, and I think there's a lot to unpack in terms of what you've highlighted there, because when we're looking at the forestry budget, it's not just about planting trees, it's about maintaining the trees that we have. It's about watering the trees that we have, and it's also around the planning cycle to be able to ensure that basically we're planting in areas where we're giving trees the greatest chance of survivability. And often that becomes a big challenge when we're dealing with densification, is how do we ensure that we're able to densify, but also allow space for trees to be able to grow and strive.
I'm happy that that's an increasing area of focus, because I know that when I talk to residents, their big concern in the past have been seeing the city planting trees, but those trees not being maintained properly so that they could get over the hump and be resilient. So I think it's very important that we look at both elements, not just the planting, but the maintenance of the trees that we plant. I have another question around the wet weather infrastructure management plan. We know that 7.5 million will be spent there. I'm just wondering, as climate risk continues to accelerate, do staff feel the current funding pace or the current funding that has been allocated is sufficient for the changes required?
Mr. Chair, the wet weather infrastructure master plan that we have is in place to analyze areas where there have been significant impacts from recent rain events. And we also have floodplain mapping. So there are two kinds. The conservation authorities are responsible for the 1 in 350 year mapping of that floodplain regarding riverine flooding, so right from rivers and other bodies of water. And we also do mapping in terms of urban flooding, so where we've seen rainwater impact neighborhoods. So we do have a prioritization in terms of what is needed and where and when we need it by. And perhaps I can turn it over to Sue to see if there's anything you'd like to add to that.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chair. The funds represent our best resource allocation for the work that we have planned and underway to continue program development and to expand in response to many of the issues that Ms. Rose mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And Chair, I only have two more questions surrounding the 3-bag limit. I was just wondering, was the 2025 communications budget sufficient to meaningfully shift resident behavior prior to rollout? And what evidence do we have that the messaging changed disposal patterns?
Chair, I'll start with the response and then ask Shelley to fill in the details. I think this is an area where we need to commend the community for their response to the change to the 3-item limit. What we've seen is through the process is a very high compliance rate in terms of meeting that limit. And I think that's in great part because of the community's engagement. Everybody recognized the importance of it. And it's one that I think working with councillors also in terms of trying to push out that communication has been very successful. We don't want to lose the momentum as we start to shift in terms of the recycling responsibilities. And that's why you're going to continue to see basically our staff focusing on those efforts. And I think Shelley indicated previously around a lot of the comms that is being worked on. A lot of those comms are going to be shared also through your offices so that you're able to push that out to the community.
And my supplementary question was really whether staff anticipate additional investments being required in 2026 to support compliance, reduce confusion, and prevent unintended impacts like illegal dumping? Or are you finding that the compliance is high enough that we don't have to really utilize more resources towards education? So I'm just wondering, what's the direction of staff in terms of education and more investment around it?
Thank you for the question. So as Alain mentioned, really it was beneficial with the support of the councillor's office as well as the will of the residents. In 2026, we are going to be focused more on green bin usage because that certainly is an opportunity, and that was raised by one of the delegations. And so we're going to be wanting to be promoting and further education on the use of the green bin in order to help further support residents to ensure that they are complying with the 3-item limit by using the green bin more, recognizing that with the recent waste audit results, we saw that there was still a high instance of green bin material that is going into our garbage. So certainly there are opportunities, and wanting to leverage some of the recent insights and wanting to make sure then that we are putting together a fulsome green bin awareness promotion campaign in 2026. So that'll be one of our primary focuses for 2026.
Well, I appreciate that work in order to ensure that the streaming is correct and that we reduce the amount of contamination within the streams. I think that's very important in terms of costs. Just really wanted to thank the chair for asking those clarifying questions around where the breakdown of spending would be in terms of climate action and in terms of our climate change master plan. Those were questions I was naturally going to ask. And once again, I really want to thank staff for the amount of work that's being undertaken to keep all of these competing priorities in balance. I think it's a tough job, especially since it is distributed amongst rate supported as well as tax supported. But we appreciate the work, and we will continue to advocate, I know, for more resources, especially around climate action, because the amounts that are always allocated are never enough. And we need more to really satisfy the objectives that we are trying to achieve in the city of Ottawa. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor King. Councillor Curry.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really just have one question, and I just want to very quickly give a brief history. About, I think, 4 or 5 years ago now, we talked about getting a coordinator for community groups, and we heard a delegation today saying, you know, we really have a lot to offer and can do quite a lot if we just have, you know, some support. So we went down the road of talking about, could we get a person that would coordinate all the community groups, the community associations, the groups in Canada. Obviously, I have the pollinator group in the Canada North Hydro Corridor. And we have talked about, you know, well, what we needed was a policy. So we went down the road of creating a better policy that included, you know, gardening in the right of way and community gardens. And we talked about, you know, projects that we could make sure were properly funded for pulling out noxious weeds. So I guess what I'm understanding is that we still don't have like an overall program with a coordinator that it is clear where community groups can just reach out, get the help that they need. And now as the years have gone by and we've waited for the policies and we've waited for the, you know, the coordination of all this, I guess my question is, and really this is on behalf of the Ottawa Stewardship Council as well, is will this budget and this coming year see that fully fledged where we have a coordinator or more than one? We talked about 2 staff moving from one department over to another department, but will this budget reflect that finally coordinated vision that we had, where community groups would have someone to go to, get the help they need, be able to go through the, start up projects that they've planned and get going.
Chair, I think that's going to be a takeaway. I think I'll have to circle back and have that discussion with some others, and I'll get back to you offline.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. I know there are many moving parts to that, but it has been quite a few years, and I know there are so many bits and pieces to this. It just isn't fully fledged. So I would look forward to seeing that happen this coming year. Thanks.
Yeah,
good Chair. Sorry, if I can add on the councillor made reference to the invasive species, and I know this is something that's been discussed previously, albeit it's not identified as a budget pressure. We have staffed a temporary position in terms of coordinator related to invasives that was presented that stemmed from previous discussions at this committee. That person is going to be reaching out in the new year, and a big role of that position is to become a community liaison in terms of really trying to leverage the expertise and the capacity that there is in the community related to invasive species. So I think it's a concrete example in terms of how we're trying to be creative in terms of the resources that we have to be able to address some of those needs.
No, I can appreciate that. I think the councillor's point is well taken on the tree front, as well as the partnership that I know our strategic initiatives team and our climate change team is going to be undertaking in 2026 as well, partnership with the community directly, which is something I've been pushing for as well as chair. And I think there's so much capacity out there and a willingness to partner and to volunteer with the city directly. We say it a lot, but I think you're all hearing it directly that we need this type of coordination and this type of outreach as much as possible with community who is willing to put in a lot of work and free time to benefit residents of Ottawa. So appreciate those points, Councillor Curry, and staff's undertaking of that task. Councillor Devine, on your first round.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, staff. Thank you for this budget that I'm very enthused to support. I have a couple questions focusing on stormwater management, a topic I like to get at a lot. One thing, I've been very, very enthused and grateful for all of the progress that the city has made on LID policy adoption. I'm enthused by the motion that I was able to bring on LID adoption to the Housing Innovation Task Force, and I'd like to hope that that motion might even help achieve some of the objectives of the high performance development standards. But on the subject of LIDs and how they apply to municipal infrastructure projects, I'm very happy to see what's in Climate Ready Ottawa, and through the many conversations I've had with our stormwater management staff, I'm very happy to see an innovative permeable pavement project coming to my colleague, Councillor Brockington's ward that I've been involved in. The question I have, does staff feel that the budget for 2026 provides enough opportunity to expand or accelerate on our incorporation of LIDs across a wider array of municipal infrastructure projects, whether as pilot initiatives or across the board acceptance of new guidelines?
Mr. Chair, yes, the simple direct answer to that question is yes.
Fantastic. Still on stormwater, on page 29 of the rate-supported budget book, there's an increase to the Stormwater Capital Reserve Fund of just under $7 million. I don't know if that's big or small. It does seem like a significant amount. Could staff, as you turn the pages to that page in the document, could staff clarify what is the revenue source for that almost $7 million infusion into the Capital Reserve Fund? I'm not sure if that's from rate or tax or DCs.
Chair, that would be mainly for the three services in the rate program. That's mainly your water bill, your wastewater bill, your stormwater fees. So the fees that we collect come into the operations, and then we make that contribution over to the capital program.
And with that $7 million contribution to that Stormwater Capital Reserve Program, is that a typical infusion at the reserve? Is it large? Are there projects attributed to that?
So Chair, it varies. So I can talk to you offline, but if you look at the reserve continuity schedule again in document 1 of the transmittal report, we show the full reserves and we show the opening balance, contribution in, contribution out. I do believe for these three services, we're seeing more going in and less coming out this time. And it's all the nature of the program. So as the demands go peak and valleys. Next year, we might see year over year, our increase always grows going in.
Yep.
What we take out changes based on the program and the project need on the capital side. So it varies. I can tell you that I think the water reserve right now is about 97 million. Wastewater is probably in the high 30s, 40s. And then storm tends to be around the $10 million range in terms of ending balance. So all that to say, our annual contribution in grows year over year. Our annual contribution out is dictated by the program, which ties back to the rate LRFP.
And with that, so I'm not sure if the 7 million is adding to whether to the balance as a whole or the balance once you add the 7 million. Is that reserve fund tied to specific projects, or is it in a reserve that we just use as needed strategically?
So Chair, so basically the water reserve exclusively for water infrastructure, wastewater reserve exclusively for wastewater infrastructure, stormwater reserve exclusively for stormwater infrastructure, and the sources are exclusively from the sources of those programs.
All right, I'll follow up on that offline. So now I have a few general comments, questions about this budget. They kind of also speak to larger global issues, I suppose, as well. Now, over the past, and I'm still on stormwater, or over the past summer, there were a lot of water main breaks. Some of them were quite high profile. In one weekend in my ward, there were 3 or 4 water main breaks. I remember speaking to the project manager. He said it was a storm to deal with. I am infinitely grateful that we have such a fantastic system for monitoring these water main breaks, because to not have that system would bring about calamity. My concern is always whether or not we are investing enough capital into an accelerated program of asset replacement, especially if these water main chickens come home to roost soon. Cyril, in the budget magazine, there's detail about our current debt to asset ratio. Currently, our debt to asset ratio is an enviable 10.8%. My understanding is that generally and broadly, any debt to asset ratio under 50% shows robust health. Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, their debt to asset ratio hovers around 20%. So we are in a very healthy place. Some would say exceedingly healthy. If water main breaks are something of a concern that may be accelerating, would you say that based on our very, very healthy debt to asset ratio, that we are in a healthy enough state that we could afford to take on more debt to accelerate water main replacement investment and still be in a healthy debt to asset ratio position?
Chair, we are in a healthy position. Even if we took on more, we would still be in a healthy position, depending on how much more you do. The key is this budget is very much aligned to the rate supported LRFP, which was approved in June, which basically meets the priority needs and the funding required for all those assets. Now, if there is an emergency or an issue with a water main break that Tammy and team may not be aware of, that's where our reserve balances are also important. As I quoted a few minutes ago, combined, we have about $130 million in those 3 reserves. So if there is an uptick in terms of priority, if Tammy's got the capacity to take on more with a priority, we can always dip into that reserve as needed, because public safety and requirements of services are key. Or she may have to shift or pause a project to do a priority project that jumps the queue. So I don't think it's a funding issue. I think it's just the reality of the program that we're working towards.
Great, thank you. So one thing I'm seeing in this budget when it comes to rates and user fees is that we're making, based on what I'm seeing, we're making things comparatively more expensive for individual families and homeowners, even small home builders. But in some ways, the rates for commercial ratepayers are not seeing the same level of increase. In that category, in several instances, they're experiencing no increase at all. An example on page 15 of the condensed tax-supported budget, there's a 9.9% increase in solid waste user fees for single households, a 10% increase in solid waste user fees for multi-residential households, 10% increase in fees for bringing in leaf and yard waste. Those are all significant increases, mainly on individuals and households. But when it comes to how much it will cost to bring in large logs, more than 20 centimeters in diameter, no increase at all. Over in the rate-supported budget, when it comes to the cost of installing new water meters, there's again another similar disparity in increases. For most individual homeowners or builders installing new water meters, they're seeing increases of 13 to 20%, but the cost for new water meters of a certain size, 75 millimeter to 150 millimeter solid state, the kinds used by large business commercial properties, their increase is only 2.7%. One concern I have is that the homes that we're trying to get built to house more people are going to cost more because of these kinds of fee changes. My question, what's the rationale for seeing 13 to 20% increases on residential water meter installations versus only 2.7% increases for commercial and industrial properties?
So Chair, the main principle of the user fee policy and legislation is full cost recovery. So where you see those changes really relates to the cost of delivering that service. So when you look at a small meter change on a residential level, it costs more because you're doing more. You're doing more small meters on multiple units versus if you go into a commercial unit, it's a bigger unit. By no means is one subsidizing the other. It really aligns the costs to the actual program. So the large meters tends to be on the commercial property sector, small tends to be on the residential sector, and it's really cost recovery in those elements.
Okay. Still in the same vein, do I have time, Chair? Yeah. Thank you. Still on the subject of rate, another concern I suppose that I have with the budget is that it seems like there's a disconnect with what I'm seeing in terms of the overall city budget, where we have low property tax increases relatively, and those low tax increases are for the sake of affordability. And there's a disconnect I see because in this budget here, it seems like the entire budget is on rate and user fees, not on tax. And those increases to rate and user fees are high. There's as I understand it, a 7.6% increase on all user fees or most user fees in 2025. If I combine the increase from 2024 to 2025, we're looking at between 10, 20% of an increase. It's a significant increase, all of it on user fees. My concern is that these kind of changes impact low-income residents disproportionately because when we keep on raising the cost of admission uniformly, it has a much higher impact on those with less means. I know that everyone's paying the same fees equally, but that's not the same as paying the same fees equitably. My question, from an equity lens, how does the city justify fee and rate increases that disproportionately burden homeowners and low-income residents while businesses see lower rate increases?
Chair, so again, it's really based on the services that we provide and the fees for those respective categories, if you will, from a residential owner to a commercial perspective. In this budget, this is largely a rate-supported budget, minus forestry and one other little small thing there. Solid waste is full rate recovery. The 3 water services are full rate recovery. It's all recovered through user fees. You're correct. The rate program is going up by 4.5% on average overall. And I think that equates to about $47 to the average homeowner. So the percentage might be going up more when you compare it to a tax increase of 3.75 overall, but the 3.75 overall has an impact of closer to, doing some quick math in my head, they're probably about 140, 144 on a property tax. So it's not apples to apples on a dollar to the house. So my water bill might be going up by $47 on average, but my property tax is actually going up by $100+, even though it's 3.75 over here versus 4.5 over here. So it's not an apples to apples comparison when you look at it from that perspective. The rate program is, the beauty of this program is the water, wastewater, and storm is exclusively tied to the rate long-range financial plan. And that's what, council endorsed in June. The solid waste program, we finally moved that to a full rate recovery, which council endorsed in 2024. So it really gives those services exclusive sources of revenue as opposed to spreading it across where those don't use it. Not entirely answering your question, but that's the premise of it. Again, I caution solid waste is going up by 10%, but the impact to the actual homeowner is a lot less than the 3.75 on the property tax bill. So the percentage is only one factor of the total costs.
Thank you. And I understand that both of those are tied to LRFPs that were already approved. My last technical question, and this is more just for my understanding, when it comes, let's say, to the cost of installing a new water meter, if right now we're recovering that cost uniformly from the user fee, is it even technically permissible that that cost can be covered both by a portion of user fee and a portion from tax, i.e. from property tax? Can both revenues pay for that cost?
Through the chair, technically the answer is yes, because there's no different, like a user fee, the premise of a user fee is really to ensure that the benefiter, that's even a word, the person getting the service pays for that service. I always use the recreational programs as an example where those skating lessons, swimming lessons are not, the cost of those programs are not exclusively recovered through the fee. There's a break because the tax is subsidized as an example, but the premise is really striving for a full cost recovery on our user fees. And not subsidizing one with another.
So some user fees use both tax and user fee, others do not. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Brockington for your direction.
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions before that. So 2 of my 6 neighborhoods are 80 years old or greater, and we're starting to see significant investment in water infrastructure renewal. Currently, 7 projects are either under construction or at the preliminary stages. And in my first term of council, we really weren't doing anything yet. So there's this fast tracking of water renewal projects, which I'm grateful for. Obviously, it's inconvenient and somewhat messy for local residents to go through, but there's a long queue of just within my ward of additional projects that are coming. The Carlton Heights Reservoir Project, $36 million project, supplies clean water to quarter of all Ottawa residents. The Cortland Park Ditch Renewal Program, the Wendy Stewart Stormwater Pond dredging in the south end, all significant investments in my ward, which I'm grateful for. Every year I ask the general manager a question whether all critical water infrastructure renewal projects that she's aware of are being financed in the budget. I just want to ask that again, whether the general manager's aware of any critical projects that are not being financed in the budget.
Mr. Chair, all critical projects are funded through this 2026 budget.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And Chair, just on the tree matter, so I appreciate the Trees and Trust is no longer exclusively reactive in nature, waiting for a resident or property owner to call the city, that the city's being more proactive and engaged in replacing those trees, helping with tree canopy replacement when trees either die or damaged through a storm. But certainly the desire in many wards to increase tree canopy and push that project even further continues. In that theme, with the 200th anniversary of Bytown coming up, I do have a direction to staff, which I'll read. This actually, it's Vice Chair Carr who is the sponsor of this, since I'm not a member of this committee. But forestry services staff are directed to assess the feasibility of a 200 tree per ward planting program to commemorate the 200th anniversary of Bytown in 2026, and staff report back in Q1 of 2026. So that's the direction, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that direction. Staff are good with that direction.
Chair, yes, because it's a feasibility that we would report back to committee.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Carr, on that.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm a little bit concerned about that direction, only because I know there's some wonderful programs underway, including the tree equity, where my ward has 2 of the key areas. I know, yeah, but happy to put the direction in. Thank you, Councillor Brockington. I just have a question with respect to the UFMP. To do with trees. I know that we had delayed part of the UFMP previously, like the pieces about, for example, the invasive trees and all that, because we were behind on our goals in terms of planting because of factors such as the derecho and that sort of stuff. And I've heard you mention today that we have enough resources now to be able to continue. Are we, when we talk about planting the trees, though, and I know we had a good discussion today and you confirmed, the 80,000 per year is kind of the baseline sort of thing. Are we going to be able to catch up at all on the UFMP? like, are we on track for we deferred the second piece of it, but we're fully meeting our goals? We have enough funding to implement everything that's in there?
So Chair, the key recommendations that were identified through UFMP, especially when it comes to tree planting, this committee and previous councils have approved an increase in terms of the resources to be able to support that. So that's what you see really reflected in the current budget. I think the issue around catching up, I think a lot of the issue, I think the main concern on that one is going to be basically as long as we have years like this year where we don't have too many weather-related events, a lot easier for us to keep up. And it's not just the keeping up in terms of the impacts of the trees. It's also the impact to our resources to be able to sustain their regular programs. So, but right now I think we're well aligned, but I'll let my colleague Debbie fill in terms of any remaining items.
Chair, I'll just add that we're beginning the process of assessing our progress with regards to the UFMP and an update on where we're at and what our plans would be for the next term of council. So we're beginning that work, and that would come back to ECC and council at the beginning of the next term.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. Yeah, I know we got the update on tree canopy earlier this year. But there was the measurements have been taken the year before. So appreciate that all the effort that's been made. Thank you very much. I don't really have any other questions today.
Thanks so much, Vice Chair. I'll just have two questions and I'll just wrap up. But on the CCMP refresh, that's currently scheduled for Q1 of 2027. As I understand it. And I just want to make sure that staff are confident we can deliver on that on schedule, that we've got the resources to deliver on that, and to make sure we're doing that evidence-based modeling work and analytical work that's inevitably part of that exercise.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the CCMP refresh, we're targeting 2027, but not necessarily Q1 at this point. So we'll connect with you on that as well. But we are beginning the planning work for that and have allocated resources as well as some funding from the budget here to enable us to do that work.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. There was a question as well about on solid waste and the green bin rollout within multi-residential buildings. Can staff just remind me where we are at on the percentage of multi-residential buildings that now have the green bin program coming online?
Thank you for the question. So for the first tranche, we're over 80% of buildings that are onboarded. And then with the second and the third, the percentages drop down. So if you recall, this fall, we brought forward as part of the Solid Waste Master Plan update, the City Champion program, renamed from Ambassador. And so we're rolling that out in order to have those individuals within buildings that can help onboard in addition with our education assistance. So with the green bin communication that will take place next year. I'm feeling very comfortable with the addition of the Champion program in order to help accelerate bringing green bins to our multi-res properties.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think this committee's had a lot on its plate this term. Certainly my goal as chair has been to focus progress where possible on climate, on buildings, on transportation and waste. Those are our top three emitting sectors, as well as prepare for the climate changes coming our way that we're seeing in our community. I think we've got a blueprint now for investment in this budget and future budgets as well. And it's important to celebrate some of the wins that wouldn't have come without the strong community advocates that we have coming day in and day out to this committee and working with us. And on climate change, I'm so pleased to see the zero emission bus program rolling out, the LED lighting conversion, including traffic lights, which is saving us money, all the building retrofits that have gone on with an 8-year return. I know that there's more to come on that in the future in 2026 and 2027, and we really need a large influx of building retrofits that save us money over time. And I know that's coming thanks to some of the motions this committee has passed as well. The $9 million in adaptation and mitigation in this budget complements the $800 million that's been spent this term on climate-related adaptation and mitigation measures within capital and operating. I know we've seen accelerated tree planting, but more important than tree planting is actually saving the existing trees we have. It's much more important than just tree planting. And this committee has done its work on that. We have changed the protection of existing trees in both urban and suburban areas. Distinctive trees are much more protected now, and it's much more difficult to take down trees in those areas as a result of the refreshed urban forest management plan and specifically our tree planting strategy. On waste, we've taken action to reduce waste going to trail. And of course, the Green Britain multi-residential continues to roll out, I think, positively. We've also set ourselves up for the future with investments in the future for capital investments in the way that our long-range financial plan has rolled out. So I feel proud and celebrate some of the wins here. There's a lot more to do on this file. That job is not done. There's so much more to do, particularly on buildings and transportation. But it's important to recognize actually how much this committee's done on so many of these aspects to date, and where we're heading into the future, which I think we're setting ourselves up for a lot more investment that should see some returns back to us. So thanks to staff and to the committee for the work, and of course to the community advocates that have done so much this term. So with that, we have the budget item in front of us. The report recommendation is that the Environment and Climate Change Committee consider the relevant portions of the 2026 operating and capital budgets, including the tax and rate supported programs, and make recommendations to council sitting in committee of the whole to be held in 2 days on December 10th, 2025. Is that carried?
Carried.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And just want to make sure we do carry the two budget motions that the vice chair also read in on the tax supported motion. Is that carried? And the rate supported motion, is that carried?
Carried.
Okay. Thanks very much for all of committee's work. I want to go in and just make sure we're getting the last items here. There are no in-camera items. IPDs, any notices of motion for next meeting? Okay. Inquiries and other business. I'm not seeing any. Our next meeting is scheduled for the 20th of January, 2026. And we are adjourned. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chair.